Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this big red beastie is the new Audi Q6 e-tron. Now, when Audi first launched the original e-tron a few years ago, they presented us with a big, bold and comfortable electric SUV. However, it wasn't very efficient and it was quite expensive. But then followed the amazing e-tron GT, which was essentially a softer version of the more focused and sporty Porsche Taycan. But just like the e-tron SUV, yeah, the GT was still an expensive car to buy. But then came the Q4, the Audi electric SUV for the masses, based on the MEB platform, so it shared it with the likes of the Skoda Enyaq and the Volkswagen ID4 and 5. That was an affordable Audi electric SUV you could get yourself into. But now the original e-tron SUV, which was rebranded the Q8 after its facelift, is no more. It has been discontinued and has been replaced with this, the new Q6 e-tron. Now this car sits on an all-new platform called the PPE platform, which stands for Premium Performance Electric. Now the first two cars to arrive on this platform is the Q6 and also the Porsche Macan Electric. Now this Q6 is going up against a huge number of very impressive rivals, from the BMW iX3, the Mercedes-Benz EQE SUV, and then some left field rivals as well, like the Genesis GV70 Electrified and the Polestar 3. So I've had this Audi Q6 e-tron for a week and I'm going to answer a couple of big questions. Number one, what's it like? And number two, how does it compete with these premium electric SUV rivals? Does the Q6 go to the top of the list? Well, stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the Q6's styling, I do think it's a bit of a handsome brute, and it is taking a new styling direction for the German brand. So firstly, up front, we have got the filled-in grille, because this is an e-tron, but it's now colour coordinated with the rest of the car, and this particular car is in Sonera Red Metallic. And I'll let you decide and let me know what you think of this colour on the Q6. Also, when it comes to the headlights, we have got these dedicated daytime running lights that are pixelated, and the main headlight cluster is actually located a little bit below, but it's really well integrated into the front bumper. And then when we look at the kind of profile of the Q6, we got the classic SUV shape, and of course, just like other Audi SUVs, you can get the Q6 as a sportback. And just like the original e-tron, at the tail we have got a tail light bar there, and also when you lock and unlock the car, it does do a little dance for you. Now there are a couple of things I need to mention. Firstly, in regards to the size of the Q6, so those alloys are 20 inches and they barely fit the arches. And secondly, when I look at the Q6, two things come to mind. Number one, that this car is trying to be a smaller Q8, but I think it kind of looks like a larger Q4. And secondly, with this front end and the way that it's been styled, and because of those slim kind of daytime running lights, I kind of get the impression this looks a little bit like a hamster with its cheeks full. But you let me know in the comments section below. But yeah, I do think it is a bit of a handsome car. I just don't think the red is the colour of choice if I was to go for a Q6. But like I said, you let me know what you think in the comments section below. And on that note, I think it's time we stop looking at the exterior of the Q6 and we see what Audi have done with the interior. So in the front of the Q6, you are greeted with a comfortable, very spacious and driver-focused interior. Now, just like the exterior of the Q6, the interior has taken a new direction when it comes to its interior styling. So that is very refreshing to see from the German brand. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the Q6, it is really easy because of that raised seated position, and also the doors open nice and wide. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then I do recommend having a little look at the Q6. I will also mention you do have grab handles for the driver and the front passenger, and when you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that it is very comfortable. It does hold a big bear like me in place. I will say the quality of the leather, I don't think is the best for this price of car. I would like to see Nappa leather on the Q6, and I have got electrically adjustable lumbar support. However, you've probably just noticed I've gone straight to the lumbar support and not about the seat adjustment. Well, I'm going to show you how to adjust the seats on this £76,350 car. That's right, it's manual adjustment on this particular press car, which I think is just criminal at this price tag. And you have to go for the top of the range edition one in order to get the electrically adjustable seats. They're not even an optional extra. So Audi, you really need to sort that out. And then when it comes to the steering, we have got both rake and reach adjustments. So it does mean getting the perfect driving position is easy, but you have to manually do it. So again, like I said, that is disappointing. Also, what's disappointing is the interior quality. It's actually, I don't know, it's just okay. I wouldn't say it's kind of befitting, again, of a £76,500 vehicle. Now, I have got some soft touch plastics here on top of the dash. There is some contrasting stitching, but it's quite far away. I have got some soft touch plastic here on top of the doors. However, it feels more harder than soft, so that's something I'd like to see Audi work on. Now we have got some harder plastics lower down, but we've got some leatherette here on the door cards. Here on the center console and on the dash, we have got some piano black plastic, which is already prone to scratches and smudges from the previous reviewers who have had it. We have got some leatherette here on the dash, and when you touch it, you can feel it's very hard underneath. It's not soft and spongy. But what I do recommend is kind of using this as a little shelf to kind of use the infotainment system. And then we have got, which I actually think, that's not leather, I don't think. I think that's soft plastic here on the armrest. So that is disappointing. So yeah, once you're sat here in the front of the Q6, like I said, this is a £76,500 car. And it doesn't feel it. It feels like this is like a new Q4 rather than a new Q8. So it does feel a bit disappointing given its price tag. And yes, I know you are going to put in the comment section below, if you have a Q8, you've got Alcantara and different materials. That's great, but just know you've had to pay for it rather than have it kind of standard on a mid £70,000 car. So yes, once you're sat here in the front of the Q6, like I said, it does feel very nice in its design. However, the interior quality in here just doesn't seem to match the price tag, and not having electrically adjustable seats is a massive disappointment from such an established premium brand. Cubby spaces in the Q6, I'm going to say are pretty good, but I would like to see some areas where they are given a bit of a refresh. So the first one would be the door pockets. Now they are of a decent size and shape. You can get a medium-sized bottle of drink in there, and they are lined with rubber. However, the surrounding hard plastics are really cheap and nasty, and just, yeah, not what I was expecting. Now we have got a little cubby space underneath the right vent. It is lined with felt, so you should be able to put some loose items in there and they not make too much noise. The only surprise is that the actual lid itself is not damped, and it just kind of drops down. And then here on the center console, so up front, this is the next area I'd like to see a bit of a redesign, because you got some kind of rubber lined tray areas. We have actually got a smoking pack where I have got an ashtray on this particular car. That's very old school. I'm not sure if that is actually an optional extra or not, but it's, yeah, quite unique. Now there is a wireless charging pad, and there is this little plastic kind of gripper that holds it in place, but I'd like to see it kind of moved, because that little plastic gripper, I've been a bit worried about it scratching the screen of my mobile phone. And it's just, yeah, it's just a little bit fussy down here, and I'd like to see it a bit open and a bit just kind of simple. Just have a nice big wide area, rubber lined, so I can put some items down there. Now I will mention, with that smoking pack and the ashtray, we have got two USB-C charging inputs, as well as a cigarette lighter and 12-volt socket. Now here on the top part of the center console, we have got a little lid here, which if you pull it back unveils two cup holders. They are rubber lined with some plastic grippers, and they are of a decent size and depth. However, again, following the kind of quality of this interior, this lid, I don't know, just doesn't feel that premium, and I'd rather it just be a dedicated open cup holder area, because I'm not really going to put anything in there and need to cover it up. I'm just going to put some drinks in there. Now we have here got your center armrest, and if I lift it up, it does unveil another bit of additional space. It is rubber lined as well, and we do have a first aid kit which tucks underneath where the cup holders are, which is quite different and not something I've come across before. But if you do want to take that out, you do get some additional space, but that's when it is hard, scratchy plastic in there. And then finally we have got the glove box, which is lockable as long as you go for the luggage pack. It is lined with felt as well, which is really handy, and it is of a decent size. And what I do like is that the book pack is not the largest, so that is very handy. So yeah, when it comes to cubby spaces here in the Q6, they are pretty decent for what you have here, but I'd like to see some redesign with this little kind of fussy area up front, and also just a boost in the interior quality of the plastics for the door pockets. But other than that, yeah, it is actually pretty decent. Now, of course, with this being a ground-up EV, a lot of the controls are going to be done via the infotainment system, and that includes the dual-zone climate control. Gone are any physical buttons in here, but there are still some physical buttons and touch-sensitive ones throughout the cabin. So here on the center console up front, we got a physical rocker switch for your volume and track select. We got 3 touch-sensitive buttons here, one for the hazard lights, the other for your drive mode select, and then we have got one for your traction control. There is actually a big physical start-stop button here for the car, because even though when you get into the Q6 it automatically springs to life, if you are perhaps parked up somewhere and you're waiting for somebody and you don't want to use the battery, you can just press that button and switch the car off. So there's some good forward thinking there, Audi. Then we have got a couple of buttons here that, again, they're touch sensitive. Now, one of them immediately operates the 360 cameras and the parking sensors. The one next to it I really do like, because when you press it, it does activate all the driver safety systems, and you can just go through and turn them off. So that's actually a really handy shortcut button, because I know it is the bane of a lot of drivers out there. So it saves you from kind of going through all the various menus. Then we have got a physical rocker switch for the gear select, as well as a button for the electric handbrake. Now on the steering wheel, we have got touch sensitive buttons on here, and again, they are touch sensitive, but they do work as physical buttons as well. Now on the left hand side, we've got all the controls for the digital dashboard display, and on the right hand side we have got things like the heated steering wheel controls. We've got your media, voice and communication controls, as well as a dedicated button that you can assign a task to. And then we have got physical stalks here behind it. We've got a physical stalk for the radar guided cruise control and some flappy paddles for the regen braking. And then here on the kind of door card on here on the handle, we have actually got another touch sensitive pad here. Now this operates things like the mirrors. You can lock and unlock the car. It operates the lights as well as a couple of buttons to deactivate or do the child locks in the back, which is very handy. However, in this lovely sunny glorious day, I can see that there are 3 that have been kind of wiped out, and they're in regards to the memory setting for your electric seats. But of course I don't have them on this car. But then just behind there I have got physical buttons to operate the windows, and I will say the way that this is located, I kind of think that the window controls are going to be on them, but I forget, and I have to lift up my arm and go, nope, there they are, and then I press them in order to use them. So that's something I'd like to see a little bit of a kind of refresh over, because definitely would like to see the window controls integrated into that system. And yeah, that's when it comes to the kind of main physical controls in here. We have got a few buttons here for the sunroof as well as your SOS. But yeah, I just find kind of the steering wheel controls going to touch sensitive are just not, I don't know, I just think this is a step backwards for Audi, because Volkswagen did this, realised they didn't work, and have gone back to physical buttons. Even Skoda use physical buttons as well. So I don't think this is a step forward, and you will find yourself as you're driving along accidentally rubbing your finger or thumb against it, and you'll do things like turn on the heated steering wheel, you'll up the volume, you might even accidentally call a friend, all because your thumb just kind of brushed against them. But like I said, they do also work as physical buttons as well, and they do give a reassuring click, so there is that air of quality there. But again, yes, I do feel it's a bit of a step backwards for the German brand. And then finally, we've got the infotainment system and the digital dashboard display. Now, both displays are OLED systems. They are very clear and colourful in the way they present their information. Now, I'm going to start with the digital dashboard display. Now, straight away, gone is the virtual cockpit. This actually feels like a step back for Audi, because It's basically just like a generic screen that's separated into 3 sections. So on the left hand side is your driver data and your brake regeneration information. On the right hand side does things like your media, your phone, and also if you've got perhaps an address that's logged into the built-in sat-nav system. And in the center is basically kind of your car information or your driver information if you've got the radar guided cruise control on. And that's it. You can't change it. You can't have it so that the whole screen is a map. You can't kind of decide what kind of information you get to put where on the screen. And when it comes to kind of customization, well, there's a view button here, and if I press it, basically you lose the 2 bits of outer information, but the car in the center still remains. But yeah, I am genuinely gutted that because it does feel like a step back. Now I will mention that you have got a massive head-up display if you go for the Sound and Vision pack. And it is actually one of the largest head-up displays I've come across. I mean, that recess there, I was going to count as an extra cubby space. And if you are using the built-in sat-nav and you have got things like Android Auto OS on the car, you do get things like augmented reality, and it does do like little projections of where you need to go on the heads-up display. So that is actually a very cool feature. And then we move on to the infotainment system. So again, it is an OLED display. Now this is a 14.5 inch display. So it is one of the largest I've come across in a Volkswagen Group car. In terms of its kind of responsiveness, it is actually pretty quick. You can go through the various menus. You have got things like Google Maps on the system, which is very handy. And then when you're going through things like the various menus, they are quite nicely presented. They are large as well, so it is relatively easy to operate when you're on the move. But I will say, because of the amount of menus that there are, it is definitely a case of setup before you set off. And then when you operate things like the dual zone climate control, one thing I do like is that for the driver it is active because I'm sat in this seat, but because there's nobody sat in the passenger seat, it has deactivated. So that's quite a cool and quirky feature. So perhaps if you've got a dog sat here, you might need to activate it so it'll blow the fans on them. But when you go into like the aircon controls, you can use the voice activation system. I do find when you press the aircon thing, everything gets a bit smaller and it does become a little bit fiddly to use the little icons there. And even the fan is actually quite small when it comes to the actual button itself. It reminds me a bit of BMW with their system that I tested recently on the 1 Series. But you have got things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are wireless as well. But yeah, it's responsive. It does everything you want it to. You have got your shortcut buttons here on the right hand side. And when you have got things like CarPlay going, it does take up a big chunk of the screen. And yeah, it's just very nice and clear and pretty much easy to use. But like I said, when you're on the move, yeah, set up before you set off. So when it comes to being sat here in the front of the Q6, like I said earlier, this is disappointing that I haven't got things like electrically adjustable seats. The perceived quality in here is just not what I was expecting from a £76,500 car. Yeah. I am quite disappointed with this interior. I was expecting it to feel more special, but never mind. That's the front of the Q6, and I think it's now time that we should leave here and have a little look and see what it's like for rear passengers. Sat in the back of the Q6, it is actually pretty spacious and comfortable back here, and I could imagine myself doing a medium, possibly long distance journey and arriving at my destination feeling refreshed and relaxed. It really is actually that comfortable back here. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see I've got a good amount of knee room. However, I can't quite tuck my feet underneath the driver's seat, and headroom is not too bad either. However, if you want to maximise space, I probably recommend not going for the sunroof, and that is a £1,500 option. So I could imagine a couple of 6-footers being sat here in the back of the Q6, and they would be comfortable, I think, for say a medium length journey. But I wouldn't recommend really having an adult in the middle seat because yeah, it might be a little bit narrow, even though it has got a bit of a wide base. But surprisingly, you have got a little bit of a transmission hump to navigate over. That is surprising on an electric car. I will also mention getting in and out of the Q6 is really easy because of that raised seated position, and the doors open nice and wide, and again we have got some grab handles. So I would recommend 2 big adults being sat here in the back of the Q6, 3 at a push, but you'll easily get 3 kids back here. Now speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and they've got this very unique lid. They just lift it up and it exposed the ISOFIX bar. Gone are the days where you actually had a plastic cover that was prone to breaking or getting lost. So that is actually really handy. And I will mention that you have got ISOFIX support on the front passenger seat. So again, that is a plus there. And then when it comes to cubby spaces, I'm going to say it's okay. We got some decent sized door pockets. We can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. And I have got a centre armrest with a couple of extra cup holders, and they have got some proper plastic grippers on them, which is very handy. I will also mention you have a 40-20-40 split in the seats, so you can get the middle seat down if you need to load any longer items through into the rear passenger area. So again, that's a very handy feature. And then when it does come to features, you have got things like tri-zone climate control, and you have got heated outer seats, and surprisingly, they are standard, so that is actually a genuine kind of highlight here. And we've also got some little vents with some little toggles for direction, so again, that's very handy. And then when it comes to the windows, as you can see, they are of a massive size. They are tinted as well. They don't quite open all the way down, maybe around about 90% or so, but there is a bit of a ledge there, so I can actually rest my arm. So that is very handy, particularly on a nice warm summer's day. And there is an extra window there in the C-pillar just to bring in a little bit more light, especially if you don't want to go for that sunroof. The only thing I would say is a bit disappointing is that you can't really recline the seats or do anything with them, nor with the base either. So that's something I would like to see Audi work on for, like I said, like the facelifted version of the Q6. So yeah, being sat in the back, it is spacious and comfortable. I do think some rivals though have more outright space here compared to the Q6, especially as that seat is set to my driving position. And like I said, I am only 5'7" tall. So that there is just something to be aware of. But on that note, I think it's time that we leave the rear seats of the Q6 and we see what the boot is like. Opening the boot of the Q6 presents you with 526 litres of space, which is actually a pretty decent boot capacity. But I will say that there are several cars in the segment below the Q6 that do have larger boot capacities. Cars like the Q4 e-tron, the Skoda Enyaq, and even the Xiaopeng G6. But when you have got the boot open on the Q6, you are presented with a nice wide square load area. You could easily get a large suitcase in there, a few weekend bags or carry-on cases, and it should easily be able to handle a week's shopping. Now, I will say there's hardly any boot lip to navigate over, but the boot level itself I do think is a bit high, so it might be a bit difficult for dogs to jump in and out of, or if you are loading any large bulky items such as a wheelchair or mobility scooter. But it's not devoid of features in the Q6. We have got a couple of sturdy tethering hooks. We've got a couple of little levers here to get the rear seats down. We've got some netted areas on the outer sides of the boot area so you can stop items rolling around. We've got a good amount of underfloor storage, which is really handy. And we've got a little strapping area here where you can perhaps put some items and kind of keep them in place. Now, I will mention this particular car has got the kind of luggage pack added to it. So things like the netted areas and the little bit of strapping, yeah, they are an optional extra, and I will put that in the description below. Now, what I do like as well is that you can put the tonneau cover underneath the boot floor, so when you do put the rear seats down, you have an almost flat load area. But I will say that there is a bit of a slope halfway up there, so if you are loading something like, I don't know, a fridge freezer or a cabinet, yeah, you just got to navigate that whilst you're loading it in. So that's just something to be aware of. But like I said, I do love the fact that you can put the tonneau cover underneath the boot floor, so you don't have to leave it at the garage. And there is another optional extra that has been fitted to this car, and if I press this button, there you go, we actually have a tow bar fitted to it, and as you can see, it's not electric. I have to manually adjust it to get it in place. So if you are looking to tow you with your Q6, I will mention that with the single motor it is 2 tons, and with the Quattro, which is what I've got here, it's 2.4 tons. So that is actually pretty impressive. And what we'll do now is put the tow bar away. We'll get the boot down and we're going to see what this Q6 is like out there on the open road. So once you start driving the Q6, first impressions are pretty positive. Now the first thing I will say is that the car does feel heavy and substantial. You do feel like you're surrounded by a big solid lump of metal. And I also kind of feel like I'm in a tank or a bath or something. And by that I mean, I know I'm in a big SUV, so I'm sat higher up than I would be in, say, a hatchback. But I'm sat very low in the car, so everything's quite high up. So as a result, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm in a tank. So that's just kind of a unique kind of thing to mention. But also there's plenty of adjustment in the seat. Granted, it is manual, so you can kind of lift yourself up, so that way you can work on your visibility and get your perfect driving position. Now, speaking of visibility, it is actually very good. Now, I have got a wonderful view of the road ahead because I have got that raised seated position. Now the bonnet does drop off, but I can kind of judge where the front of the car is because it has got quite a short stubby front end to it. It doesn't kind of slope away like other cars, like for aerodynamics. And then we got the A-pillars, which are quite thick and chunky, but I haven't found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a lovely shape and size, and I have got blind spot monitoring as well, so that is a bonus. And then if I look over my shoulder, I do find that the C-pillar is not too thick because it's got that window there, which does aid with extra visibility, as well as allowing a little bit of extra light into the rear of the cabin. So that is something. And then rear visibility, I'm gonna say, is pretty good. However, the outer headrests do obstruct a chunk of your view. So that is something to be aware of. But with this particular car, I have got things like 360 cameras and all-round parking sensors, plus I got park assist as well. So that will definitely help me out. So yeah, once you start driving the new Q6, it does feel heavy. I am going to mention that right now, and I will talk about battery sizes and that later on, but it does feel substantial. Now, it is also a comfortable car to drive and quite easy to drive as well, but because of that driving position and that kind of size to it, yeah, it is quite a large car, so it is something to get used to. Now, when it comes to trim levels in the Q6 range, it kind of reminded me of purchasing a Mini, because you've got a couple of levels to go through and then you get to pick your option packs. So it starts off with the Q6 with your trim level. So you get the entry level Sport, the mid-spec S-Line, which is what I've got here, and then you get the top of the range Edition 1. And then once you've picked your trim level, you then go up to your battery size and performance. And again, you have an entry-level Sport, you then have a Sport Performance, and then you have a top-of-the-range Quattro, which is what I've got here. And then you get to add various option packs to your car. Now, personally, if I was purchasing a Q6, what I would do is go for the Edition 1 trim level, and I would get the Sport Performance pack. Now, you get the larger battery, but you only get a single motor, and it is rear wheel drive. And that way you will get the most range out of the Q6, at least on paper. So obviously if you go for the Quattro, you are going to get a dual motor setup. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are looking to tow with your Q6, with the single motor version, you do actually get the ability to tow 2 tons. With the Quattro, that moves up to 2.4 tons. So that is pretty impressive for this type of car. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Edition 1 with the Sport Performance battery size. And of course, then when it comes to the option packs, you choose what you want. But I will say this, at the time of recording, which is at the end of April 2025, if you go for the Quattro version of the Q6, you will get the sound and vision pack as standard on the car. After the end of June, that then becomes an optional extra, and that's when it will cost you around £3,100, which is quite a lot, but I will say it's probably one of the option packs I definitely recommend. So yeah, definitely go, for me anyway, go for the Edition 1. We're testing out the ride quality now. Go for the Edition 1, at least that way you got the electrically adjustable seats, but go for the Sport Performance battery size and performance, just to get the most range out of the car. Now, when it comes to powering the Q6, as I just mentioned, there are 3 battery choices available. You've got the entry-level Sport, the Sport Performance, and then the top-of-the-range Quattro, which is what I've got here. Now, I did recommend the Sport Performance because you get the larger battery with a single motor, and it is rear-wheel drive. Of course, with the Quattro, it's going to be a dual-motor, all-wheel drive setup. So I'm going to put everything on screen now for you so you can compare. But essentially, if you go for the entry-level Sport, you get an 83 kilowatt-hour battery with 252 brake horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. 0 to 62 takes around 7.6 seconds, so it is actually pretty brisk, and I am impressed with those numbers. And then when it comes to range, Audi say I should have claimed up to 291 miles on a WLTP cycle. So that's not too bad, but I would have liked it to have cracked that big 300. Now, if you go for the Sport Performance, and this is my recommendation, the battery size is upped to 100 kilowatts, which is actually very large, and you've got 300 brake horsepower and 485 newton meters of torque. 0 to 62 drops to 6.7 seconds, which is again very impressive, I feel. And then the range goes up to a claimed 391 miles. So on paper, at least, that is impressive. And then you got the Quattro, which is what I've got here. So again, I have got that 100 kilowatt hour battery. And when it comes to brake horsepower, that goes up to 382. Torque is split, so I got 275 newton meters up front with the front motor and 580 with the rear motor. So my 0 to 62 time in this car is around 5.9 seconds, and that is, well, that is proper hot hatch territory, especially for a, 2.5 ton family SUV. And then range, of course, is going to drop because you have got the extra motor and performance to a claimed 347 miles. Now, realistically, I don't know really if you're going to get anywhere near that, because on the couple of times I've charged the Q6 this week, it has not yet cracked 280 miles. So that's just something to be aware of there. Now, I don't know if it's the car itself, or perhaps if it's kind of remembering previous journalists that have driven the car, but this particular car has shown up on YouTube recently with a number of content creators, and they seem to drive it in a relaxed manner. And what they tell me as well is that they've been getting the same claimed range at 100%, around 260 to 274 miles, which is not the best, if I'm going to be honest, for a big batteried car like this. And I would have liked at least for it to crack 300 at least. So that's a little bit disappointing, but yeah, another reason why I do recommend going for the Sport Performance, because hopefully and realistically you should be able to get maybe around 340 miles of range. I mean, at least then that will be pretty decent. Now, when it comes to charging and brake regeneration, this is actually a strong area for the Q6. So let's start with charging. So with the new PPE platform, it does mean you have got 800 volt architecture. So you have got supercharging capability. So with the smaller battery on the Q6, you have actually got a DC charge rate of up to 230 kilowatts, which means you can go from 10 to 80% in around 21 minutes. And then if you go for the larger battery, the 100 kilowatt hour battery, that increases to 270 kilowatts of charging capability. And again, you can go from 10 to 80% in 21 minutes. So that is very impressive and will definitely help you if you are going on a long journey. I will mention as well that there are charge flaps on each side of the Q6. One of them just does AC charging and the other side does AC and DC, and I do believe it is the passenger side that has both of those charging sockets there. So that's just something to be aware of, but that is actually a highlight of the Q6, because if you are perhaps in a driveway where your charger's on this side, at least that way you know you can plug it in and charge it and not have to get any kind of extension cable for you. So that is a definite highlight there. And then we move on to brake regeneration. So there are a couple of ways to activate it. Firstly, using the flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel, and also by using the gear selector and putting the car into B mode. Now, if you use the paddles on the back of the steering wheel, they do pop up on the screen and you can adjust the strength. And then when you take your foot off, it is pretty much one pedal driving. The only problem is, as soon as you start accelerating, that disappears and you have to redo it on the paddles in order to re-engage the brake regen. It doesn't remember it. However, if you use the gear selector and put it into B mode, you've got proper one pedal driving and it won't disappear. It will remain there, so you'll always have that full strength brake regeneration. So yeah, when it comes to the charging and brake regen on the Q6, it is a strong area on the car thanks to that new platform. So not only have you got the Porsche Macan EV that will do it, but also new models from Audi like the new A6 e-tron as an example, which has just been released in the UK, that will have very similar charging capability as well. So like I said, that is impressive, along with the brake regen. Now, I will mention that you have got 5 drive modes to choose from, and of course Audi name them in their own particular way. So you have got balanced, which is essentially normal for everyday driving. You got dynamic, which is your sport, comfort, which is your comfort, and efficiency, which is your eco. And because we got the Quattro, we have got one which is called Off-Road Plus, so that will like disengage the stability control to allow you to get like maximum traction if you do decide to take your Q6 off-road, although I wouldn't dare call this a dedicated off-roader, but maybe for some loose gravel or some wet grass you might be able to have a go at with your Q6. So yeah, you've got your 5 drive modes to choose from. You're probably going to spend most of your time in either balanced, comfort or efficiency, depending on what kind of drive you're doing. I have been spending most of my time in comfort, and I will say, as we move on to the ride and refinement of the Q6, yeah, it's a little bit of an Achilles heel. So what about the Q6's ride and refinement? Well, on this particular car, as I mentioned, you do get 20-inch alloy wheels as standard. If you go for the entry-level Sport, they drop down to 19s. And we're just driving into the village now, which is a great test of a car's ride comfort. And as you can probably hear, it is a bit boomy, it is a little bit crashy coming into the cabin. It's not the most uncomfortable, but you can definitely hear it as you go over those bumps and imperfections. And yeah, that's just a little bit disappointing in this type of car. Now, I will mention, I have got this Q6 set up in comfort mode. And yeah, it's not really kind of wafting over those bumps and imperfections. You can hear them, you can feel them, but these seats do a good job of taking a big kind of chunk of the vibration and sting out of those potholes and manhole covers that you're driving over. So yeah, when it comes to the ride comfort in the Q6, even in comfort mode, it isn't really the best. Now, here's kind of an Achilles heel with the Q6, is that you can get adaptive air suspension, but that's only available, I believe, on the SQ6. It's not an optional extra on lower down trim levels. And again, Audi, what are you doing? You're gonna put people off if you've just got regular suspension setup and it can't deal with the bumps and imperfections as well as that air suspension. That is again another disappointment. For day-to-day driving, it should be okay, but there are more comfortable cars out there. In fact, there are more comfortable, cheaper cars out there that can compare to the Q6 and ride better than the Q6. Yeah, I'm genuinely I was expecting more. I was expecting this like an e-tron GT to a Porsche Taycan. I was expecting this to be more wafty, more premium and executive and luxurious in the way it rides, but it's not. It's actually a bit of a disappointment. But if you get yourself up to speed, like now, say 60 miles an hour, in terms of refinement, It is actually not too bad. Main intrusion is tyre roar. I can hear a lot of wind noise coming off the A-pillar as well. But yeah, it's surprisingly wafty when it comes to the refinement. I will mention I have got the Bang & Olufsen sound system because I got the Sound and Vision pack on this Quattro, and it is a really good sound system. You've got like 20 speakers. You have got a couple of them as well in the headrest, so that's actually quite unique. But yeah, that will definitely help you on a longer journey if you've got that tyre roar and the kind of wind noise coming off the A-pillar there. So yeah, when it comes to the ride and refinement, again, I was expecting more from the Q6, and it has been a little bit of a letdown, especially with the ride. I was expecting this to be a more comfortable car to be in, but alas, I don't have the SQ6 with the adaptive air suspension. So what is the Q6's handling like? Well, firstly, I do like this new steering wheel design. It's a double D design, which basically means it's got a flat top and a flat bottom, so you've got a clear view of the digital dash, and I do like the thickness and the perforated leather. Now, as I chuck it into the corners, I am in comfort mode, and as I chuck it in, there's a bit of lean and roll there, and you can feel the weight. So let's put this into dynamic and really sharpen things up. So the steering has become a bit weightier. I think the suspension is a bit firmer. But there is still some lean and roll there. So this is not a sporty SUV. Now there is an SQ6 you can go for, and that's the one with the adaptive air suspension. So I'm guessing that's going to be a more planted car when you push it in the bends. But yeah, there's lean and roll in the corner there, which is not the nicest thing to come across. However, there is a good amount of weight in the steering when you have got it in dynamic. If I put it into comfort, yes, it does soften up a little bit, but there's still a nice amount of weight in there, so you do feel connected to the car, and it doesn't feel like you're driving in a video game. So that is a positive. Now, the only thing I will say is that when it comes to positioning yourself in the Q6, and I mean this in like a multi-story car park or perhaps a drive-through, yes, I have been through a couple this week, you do find it is quite difficult to position and judge where the wheels are in the Q6, and that can be quite awkward. And if you've got kind of big alloys like I got the 20s on this particular car, you can be a little bit worried about curbing them, and I have had to resort to kind of switching on the cameras and the parking sensors to help me out. So that's just something to be aware of with the kind of size and shape of the Q6. It can be difficult to place in kind of tight and narrow car parks, because it is, like I said earlier, it is a big car. But when it comes to the ride and refinement along with the handling, it should be okay for day-to-day driving. It's not going to cause any major issues. I just wish this was a more comfortable car to be in. I wish this was more a GT car, like the e-tron GT to the Porsche Taycan, rather than, I don't know, it's trying to be sporty and comfortable at the same time, and it can't quite get that balance right. Just, you need to pick a lane, Audi, because I'm bouncing around all over the place, and I'm even in comfort mode now. So yeah, with the ride, refinement and handling, it's a bit of a letdown. It's uninspired. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's dull or boring or anything, but I was expecting more, and I feel like I'm just left here wanting, and that's really disappointing to say about what should be a really lovely electric SUV. So with my time in the Q6, what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I need to let you guys know about? Well, highlights have definitely been the fact that the car is big and imposing, and it is heavy. The problem is, with it being big and heavy, it doesn't really help out when it comes to things like range and efficiency. And I will say, with this particular metallic paint colour, it has been getting a lot of second glances, and I'm not surprised by that. A lot of Q6s you're going to see are going to be in kind of silvers and greys and blacks, so to see it in bright red is a bit of a rarity. And then something I do love about it is the sound and vision pack. Now I am going to put everything that's in that particular pack in the description below, because I do recommend you go for it. I really do love the head-up display with the augmented reality. We have got things like the interior night lights, which are really nice, and you can kind of do like a top color and then a bottom color, so I have set up to look like the Joker, kind of purples and greens. And what I do love as well is that when you indicate, a little strip of this LED light that goes around the dash, which I first came across in the Cupra Formentor, and it does actually have a little scroll next to it. So it is a gimmick, but it does let you know that you are indicating, so that is quite cool. And I did notice as well, when I had a friend of mine in the car, as he was kind of opening the door, somebody was going to drive past him, and the whole section glowed red. So that's really cool as a safety aspect in the Q6. But as I said, on the Quattro, it is standard until the end of June, so just be aware of that. Now, something that has been quite disappointing to see on the Q6, considering we've got the kind of OLED screen, and this is a £76,500 car, is the camera image quality. It is, I'm going to be honest, quite poor. It is quite noisy, even during daytime, and at night it does get worse. So that is, yeah, that is a bit of a disappointment, and especially again, as there are cars that are cheaper than the Q6 that have better resolution on the screen. And I am thinking of cars like BMW and Mini. I really did love the level 3 pack I had on the Mini Aceman, which was just absolutely sublime, and it was on a smaller screen as well. And then we have got just things like the perceived build quality in the cabin. Now, something I didn't mention earlier is that we have got this kind of piano black plastic panel here on the dash. Now, what you can do as an optional extra, no, I do apologise, it's not an optional extra, it's on the Edition 1, is that you can have it as a screen. Now, I wouldn't be able to see it, but my passenger will be able to kind of go into certain menus and games and stuff and be able to do what they want. But the fact that it's now been replaced with a piano black plastic bar, because I haven't got that on this car, it is really reflective. And the other thing as well is I can see kind of all the little spots and everything. I think it's on the sunroof, possibly, I'm not quite sure. But anyway, there's something reflective off there, and it is distracting. So that's one thing, again, about having piano black plastic, and a lot of it on this interior. And then, what else is there? Oh, I forgot to mention earlier that I do have a frunk on the car. It's 64 litres, which is actually very impressive. It does come with a big chunky bag to put your cables in. Now, when I kind of spec'd up this car on the Audi configurator, it wasn't an optional extra. So at this time, I'm going to say it's not an optional extra, because I think it's apparently £500. But if it is, come on Audi, that should be standard. There are a couple of rattles. Now, I know there have been a few content creators who've had this exact car to test, and they've mentioned it. Now, I've got nothing up front. There's no creaks, no rattles up front. The rattles, not creaks, are behind me, but I don't know what they are, and I think they're coming from the boot area, and I know one of them is going to be a license plate which is underneath the boot floor, because it's resting, because we got a tow bar on this car. So if we are going to tow, they give you an extra registration number or plate so you can stick it on your trailer. But other than that, there is something else creaking in the boot area, but I'm not sure what. So this is again something that I am disappointed to come across in an Audi. But yeah, I think it's now time we get rid of those pros and cons, the little highlights and niggles, and move on to the conclusion. So what are my thoughts on the new Audi Q6 e-tron? Well, at the beginning of this review, I asked two big questions. Number one, what's the Q6 like? And number two, can it now really compete in this highly competitive segment of premium electric SUVs? So, the first question, what's the car like? I'm going to sum it up in one word. For a car that is over £76,000, it's disappointing. I feel let down driving this. I was expecting more, and you know what? The best way I can describe this is it feels like a slightly larger Q4. It feels like it should be on that price tag, not £76,500. I am really surprised by the perceived quality on this interior. I was expecting it to feel like a really lovely plush electric SUV to drive, especially as this is sharing its platform with the Porsche Macan Electric. So I was expecting this to be something special. I think it's got a bit of an identity crisis. I think it's trying to be a sporty, luxurious SUV, and it shouldn't be. Let the sporty be with Porsche. They've got that nailed with the Macan. This should have been like the e-tron GT. This should have been a big, wafty, comfortable cruiser that could just eat continents for breakfast. But it's not. No, personally, this is really difficult to recommend. It really is. Maybe on a company car salary sacrifice scheme or something, it might work really well. But from a private retail buy, I wouldn't have one. I'm really sorry. And it's difficult to recommend. I'd probably recommend waiting a couple of months and going for a Genesis GV70 electrified, because there's a facelifted version coming out, and that feels like a lovely premium electric SUV. Yeah, sorry Audi, this just can't compete with its rivals. Certain numbers look really good on paper, but then when you get in, yeah, it's disappointing. Audi, you need to do better. Come on, and you are better than this. Anyway, yeah, that's kind of a nice little kind of cue there to wrap it up. The Audi Q6 e-tron, lots of promise, fails to deliver. And £76,500 for no electric seats, or no electric seats. Bonkers. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of this, the new Audi Q6 e-tron. Yes, as you've heard, I have been bitterly disappointed in it, as I did expect more from a car that costs over £76,000. Now, please don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions about the Q6 e-tron and my time with it, please put them down in the comment section below, and I will do my utmost to answer them. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. As I mentioned, I am, yes, bitterly disappointed in this Q6 e-tron. I was expecting so much, but Audi, you need to do better. But everyone else, you're all doing fine. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and bye bye.